Okay, so the key idea we need to wrap our heads around is this concept of omniscience, from the Latin for all-knowing. Traditionally, if you're thinking about a perfect being, you'd assume it has to have perfect knowledge. It knows everything, past, present, and future. But as we're about to see, this idea, it's got some major strings attached.
Let's just put it as simply as possible. If some all-knowing being knows with absolute certainty that you will drink coffee tomorrow morning, is it genuinely possible for you to choose tea instead? I mean, if you can't choose tea, then how are you really free? And that, in a nutshell, is the paradox. Perfect foreknowledge feels like it just cancels out free will.
So here's the logical trap, step by step. First, we tend to think freedom means you could have done something else. Makes sense, right? But second, a perfect being's knowledge can't be wrong. If it knows you're going to do X, then it has to be true that you will do X. So, if it's already a settled fact that X is what you will do, how can you possibly have the power not to do X? The logic feels inescapable. It just seems to lock you in.
And this right here pushes us into a really tough spot. On the one hand, if we really are free, then the future has to be open, which means no being can know it completely. So God isn't omniscient. But on the other hand, if God is omniscient and knows the future, then we aren't free. And since most people think free will is a really great thing, creating beings without it, well, that might mean God isn't perfectly good. It feels like you have to sacrifice either God's perfect knowledge or God's perfect goodness.
So, how do we get out of this mess? Well, philosophers have of course proposed a few escape routes. Let's take a look at two of the most common answers though. As we'll see, they might not be totally satisfying.
Okay, the first solution just redefines omniscience. The idea is that God exists in time, just like us, and knows everything that can be known. But this view says future free choices are, by their very nature, unknowable. So God is still all-knowing, but all-knowing just doesn't include the unknowable future. But, the pushback here is pretty strong. Doesn't this kind of weaken the whole idea of a perfect being if there are things, like our future, that it just can't know?
Now, the second attempt, called compatibilism, tries to have its cake and eat it too. It says, sure, God knows you will do something, but that doesn't mean you're forced to do it. You still could have done otherwise. But here's the killer objection. If you really could do otherwise, that means you could act in a way that would make God's past belief about your future wrong. And God's knowledge is supposed to be infallible. You can't change the past, right? And God's prior knowledge is, well, in the past.
Neither of those solutions feels quite right, does it? They both seem to give something up. So now we get to the big turning point, a real game changer in the argument. Instead of trying to cram God's knowledge into our little box of time, what if we've been thinking about time and God all wrong from the start?
This, right here, is the crucial distinction. Everlasting just means existing in time, but forever. There's still a past, a present, and a future. But eternal, whoa, that is a whole different ballgame. It means existing completely outside of time, an atemporal, timeless existence where words like before and after don't even make sense. This is a radical shift.
The philosopher Boethius came up with this really profound definition of what it means to be eternal. Think about that. The complete possession all at once of illimitable life. It's a life that isn't lived tick-tock, moment by moment. Nothing is in the past and gone, and nothing is still to come. It's a life that is held completely all at once, in a single, timeless present. This idea is the foundation for a much more powerful solution. To help us wrap our heads around this, think of this amazing analogy. Picture our timeline, past, present, future, as the circumference of a circle. We're the ones walking along that line, one point at a time. But an eternal being is like the center point of that circle. And from that one single point, it is present to every single moment on the circle, simultaneously. It's not ahead of us, it's not behind us, it's just present to all of it, all at once.
Right, so the solution hinges on this one thing. Understanding that our now is a fleeting moment on that timeline. But an eternal now is something completely different. It's not a point in time, it's a state of being that contains all of time within it.
To really get this, we need three different ways of thinking about at the same time. First, there's T-simultaneity. That's our normal everyday idea. Two things happening at the same temporal moment. Think Descartes and Locke both being alive in 1648. Easy enough. Then you have E-simultaneity, which is just things existing in that same eternal present. But the magic, the real breakthrough, is in ET simultaneity. This is how an eternal being is present to a temporal event. From this view, God is present to you watching this right now, and is also present to your 10th birthday. And here it is. This is the core of the resolution. The entire problem that we started with was based on the idea that God knows your actions before you do them. But for a being that exists outside of time, there is no before. The word itself is just meaningless.
And just like that, the paradox melts away. You see, God doesn't have foreknowledge. God has simultaneous knowledge. God knows what you are doing as you are doing it, because from that eternal perspective, every moment of your life is happening in its present. It's knowledge of the event as it happens, not a prediction about the event before it happens.
Think of it this way. You're aware that you are listening to my voice right now. Does your own knowledge of what you're doing force you to do it? Of course not. Well, God's knowledge from this timeless perspective works the same way. It's a perfect, real-time observation of your free action, not something that causes it.
So let's pull all this together. The whole massive conflict, it all comes from one simple mistake, assuming an eternal being is stuck on our timeline, just like us. But once you shift your thinking and see God as truly eternal, outside of time, the paradox just vanishes. Perfect knowledge and true human freedom can, after all, coexist.
And what that means is that the brutal choice we thought we had to make at the beginning, sacrificing either God's omniscience or God's goodness, was a false dilemma all along. It was a problem created by our own limited temporal way of seeing things, not a real contradiction in the nature of reality.